right, welcome back, folks. We've got an exceptional guest for you today. If you don't know who he is, you do now. This is Garrison Wynn. He is the owner and CEO of Wynn Solutions. Garrison Wynn Solutions, or
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
yeah, okay. And he's a major keynote speaker who has presented to some of the world's most successful organizations and safety advocates. His clients include Amazon, Caterpillar, Turner Construction, who I used to work for, the National Safety Council, the NFL, and NASA, right? And that's not North America, South America, folks. That is NASA, these space people.
He is not the Bahamas.
Not the NASA, other NASA. Yeah.
Right. The other NASA.
He's an Amazon.com #1 best-selling author who has spoken on 5 different continents and has been featured in Forbes and Inc. magazines. He is also a former professional stand-up comedian, a chemical plant explosion survivor, and a former Fortune 500 leader who has helped to develop safety products that are still being sold in 30 countries. Listeners, I want y'all to welcome the one and only Garrison Wynn. Garrison, thanks for having us.
Doing this. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
So where are we getting you from today?
I'm in my office in Houston. So that's where I am right now.
Good, great old state of Texas. I love it. I'm originally from Texas.
Oh, yeah? It's hot. We have 2 seasons here. We have hot in January. Those are the 2 seasons we have in Houston. So, just 2.
I like that.
Just 2.
So former stand-up comedian. How long were you a comedian?
Back in the day. I did in the 80s, and then a little bit in the 90s. So I was never close to being famous. I was a middle. So you had a famous headliner guy in the middle and like the opening guy who usually kind of sucked, but I was in the middle. And I worked with people who were famous, but I wasn't famous. So I worked with Mitch Hedberg and Ron White. Guys like that. Oh, yeah. I worked with Ron White when he had a mullet back then, like back in like 1984 with his mullet.
Oh, man.
But I did that for a while and off and on, and then went into business. And I started off, my first job I ever had was digging ditches. I was digging ditches at 19, and then got promoted to a ditch witch, which is a real dangerous way to dig ditches back in the day. If you're with ditch witch, they're a lot better than they were back then. They improved the safety of that machine. And then ran my own crews and ended up in the instrumentation business. I was a certified instrumentation specialist, worked for Babbitt back in the day, and was in lots of chemical plants, one of which blew up. So that's another story. So,
wow.
And so do you, I guess now that you're a keynote speaker, you still kind of get you get a chance to do your comedy on stage as you're touring and getting to speak. Is that still somewhat of a passion?
I mean, I'm funnier than the last speaker they had, let's put it that way. So if like I'm speaking, that's not saying much. I've been at some conventions where like the bar is pretty low, but yeah, what I do is I don't tell a sad story, and I'm not criticizing. There's some really good, strong speakers out there that have a sad story of personal experience and all that. That's not my story. I don't tell that story. I keep things upbeat and fun and laugh. I do talk about a very serious topic. I'm very serious on safety, especially creating a culture and sustaining a culture of safety. I hate to keep that culture going. But I do talk a little bit about my experience in a chemical plant explosion, but I don't go into detail about that. There are other people that were certainly injured worse than I was with bigger, better stories than that. But the message of that story is this, that everybody knows something that you don't. And the minute you think you know it all, wisdom leaves you like that. Yeah. So what happened to me, I was ultrasonic level transmitters and point level switches. We were at the Arco plant in 1990, and I watched the safety video. Back in those days, believe it or not, every safety video had its, every plant location had its own safety video, homemade safety video they made at the plant location. There's no, they were pretty weird. So this video that day pretty much said, 1 horn blast means you're going to die, and 2 is the all clear, pretty much, right? So, okay, got it. And I had on a fireproof Nomex suit. I had gloves, I had respirator, I had goggles, helmet, steel-toed boots. I'm ready to go. And I was following a guy to the plant, and this guy was kind of a dumbass. He didn't know where he was going. And I kept saying, hey, man, what's up? He goes, oh, sorry, Mr. Wynn, there's a lot of construction, so it's kind of confusing, like whatever. So I follow this guy, and I've got no faith in this guy, Jimmy, no faith in Jimmy. And right at the height of my lack of faith in Jimmy, it's like, all of a sudden there was a horn blast. And then there was a second blast, which is the plant blowing up. So anyway, so I'm kind of in the air and on fire. I've never been on fire. Being on fire sucks, by the way. So I'm to the ground now, and he comes up and goes, get up, get your ass up and run right that way. And I did. And so he was dumb as a box of rocks, but he knew where to run. That's the truth. He knew where to run. And the thing about it is I just listened to him because he worked there in that moment. Not everybody did. We had 15 fatalities that day, 130 injuries. Mine was nothing. That was minor. I wasn't close enough to be in any real danger. Fire just swung into us. But what I learned is that everybody knows something when it comes to safety. Everybody knows something that you don't. And the minute you think you know it all, then wisdom leaves you. Nobody's too smart to be safe. Expertise will make you safe. You guys maybe heard the name Nobel, the Nobel brothers, right? They invented dynamite and the Nobel Peace Prize. Same dudes for some reason. But the one brother that worked on dynamite blew himself up. He died in a dynamite explosion trying to invent safer dynamite. So this weird idea that I'm a total expert, that I'm such an expert that I'm somehow safer than someone is not true. Safety is for everybody. So anyway,
my follow-up question.
Yeah.
What was his anticipation of safer dynamite? Like, what did that look like?
Well, never know.
It blew up a lot slower, so you can get away from it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It had a slower blow up. You could track it.
Yeah.
But we'll never know. But I mean, his intent was to, try to make, I don't know how you make safer dynamite. Now, today I spoke for the convention for Dyno Nobel. So that's the company, right? And Dyno Nobel makes explosives for mining. I spoke to Newmont Mines. I spoke to Rio Tinto Mining. I spoke at the National Mining Association convention a couple of years ago in Las Vegas. I did Mosaic Mines. I just did the Nevada gold mine out in the middle of nowhere, by the way. So I've done a lot in mining over time, and you have to have effective explosives, and people know what they're doing. That's what Nobel does. That's their thing.
Wow. And that story reminded me of the Segway guy. Have you heard of him? The one that invented the Segways?
Yeah.
He drowned on his own Segway.
Yeah. That's right.
Ran it into a river.
I know. The guy that invented it in the Segway, who obviously must have known a little bit about how it operated. He did invent it. Yeah. Drove by.
How do you drown like a Segway?
Yeah, right. But didn't he go like...
He couldn't get the door open?
I think No, there's no doors. Yeah, that's what happened. He put a door on the Segway.
That's like drowning in a convertible.
Right. Well, yeah. The thing is, but didn't he drive off a cliff and then into a ravine of water? It was like kind of dramatic, I thought.
It was something like that. But,
so the water wasn't.
Right.
I read today. Speaking of water, they found some new evidence in the Titanic.
Really?
That the pool on the Titanic's still full of water. Believe it.
Oh. I'd like to say for the record that Corey writes his own jokes. Just so you know, it's a Corey original. That's what that.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's definitely original. Oh man. So not going to take up this important man's time with stupid, corny jokes like that. But what the difference? No.
Really?
No, but man, 30 different continents. Do you have a favorite?
Well, not 30. I think there's only 6. I've been on 5.
I mean, country.
Yeah. This guy's been on 30 continents.
Man, you got me all twisted now. Go ahead.
Anybody's been on 30 continents, you might want to change your medication. If you're on 30 continents, I would definitely change up your meds because there's a problem. Yeah, no. So I've been around the world, and Europe and Asia, and everywhere. So I've been all over the place. So I mean, everywhere you could go. I had some interesting experiences. I was in Indonesia at a tin mining operation on the island of Bangka off the coast of Sumatra. And there was like all these tigers, like there were like all the tigers on the island. And I asked the guy, I said, I can't believe that you shoot tigers, because I think that, tigers are an endangered species. And the guy goes, no, we're the endangered species on this island because there's 230 people. So, but it was interesting. But so I've been some interesting places for sure. A lot of times, I'm not just in a ballroom in a hotel, though there's a lot of that, most of that. But sometimes I'm in the plant. I'm there in the plant. Sometimes, I'm at the location. I did a thing for Skanska in Seattle. They're a big deal they were doing there, and we had like a couple thousand people outdoors, literally at the site. Like right at the giant compound where they were building everything. So, yeah, it was.
What's the biggest crowd you've spoke in front of?
5,700 at a pre-Super Bowl thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had like NFL people there and, employees and all that kind of, they just had a corner of the stadium. But I did 4,500 people for Subway, like Subway sandwiches. I did just recently, this year, I did about 3,000, 2,800 people for Commodity Classic. Those are basically commercial farmers and farming, agricultural stuff. So but a lot of times I've got 100, supervisors in a small hotel ballroom. I do a lot of that. Sometimes it's more than that. I think coming up, I've got some big stuff going on, some big organizations, and I've done, the OSHA stuff, the, governor's conference kind of stuff, where they have different owners and people that come in, different companies. And sometimes I do a room full of people who are just safety focused, but most of what I do is a mix of people. You got some safety people in there, but just, leaders who are managing people. And how does a leader create a culture of engagement that creates safety? Because my big message is this: the safest people in the world are looking out for each other. And the safest cultures are leaders who get buy-in on safety, so they'll do that. So in other words, are you personally influential enough to get safety, to get people to believe in safety? Because I'm not saying that one safety program is worse than another. So I'm not saying that. Quite specifically, I'm saying that the most successful safety programs are the ones people will follow. And they usually follow that program because the leader believes. What flies out of your mouth on the job site, that's the culture. And
if you don't lead by example, it's not.
That's right. You can't. That's why you can't lead by example if you're a bad example. My shop teacher in high school had 3 fingers. Yeah. So he knew what to do. He just wasn't that good at it. I really did. Mr. Michael, I kid you not, Mr. Michaels would go, okay, we're talking about safety. Everybody pick up your saw. We're talking about saw safety. I'm like, not touching that damn thing. I'm not doing it. The definition of leadership is kind of someone following someone because they want to, not because they have to. And it's really important. Like you said, you just can't lead by example if you're a bad example. That's a very good point, Corey. That's for sure.
So you mentioned Subway. That's very interesting. And 3,000 people. Who was this mix of? Was it like the people that go in and make your sandwiches and managers and corporate, or what?
Yeah, total was 4,500 people. And Subway had rented out at a big hotel in Las Vegas, I believe. They had a big trade show going on. They had sandwich competitions. People were making sandwiches, and they were doing speed and accuracy and all that. Lots of leaders that were there.
You followed up with accuracy on that. That's a good way to end that sentence.
That's exactly right. We make the fastest sandwiches. We make the fastest sandwiches. Just ask Johnny, who's missing a finger, about how quick he can make a sandwich.
Don't eat the sandwich, but I made it really fast.
Right. That's right. Yeah, right. Don't eat that sandwich. But the thing is that my focus was mainly for that particular thing was on leadership and there's some on situational awareness for sure, but definitely leadership and focusing on what the managers could do. But we had lots of people there And then Jared, remember Jared, the guy that lost all the weight?
Yeah.
I think he's
yeah.
had some problems since then. This was pre his problems. Jared came out and did his thing for like 20 minutes, and then they came out and introduced me. I did like maybe 50 minutes, and very much focused like on communication and conversations. I believe groups that talk to each other and know each other are the best. One of the things we do a lot of research. We partner with Gallup in a subsidiary that's Gallup related, which is called Evolve Performance Group, which is focuses on industrial stuff and on safety. And so we look at a lot of data. We look at a lot of employee engagement surveys and safety-based surveys to kind of see what's working and what's not. And groups of people that look out for each other are simply safer. They're watching each other's backs. And as I said earlier, when a leader makes people feel valuable, they're more likely to value each other. And the number one thing that all humans value statistically is feeling valuable. When people feel valuable, they look out for themselves and they look out for others.
Right. They got that self-worth.
That's right. That's exactly right. But the other thing that's important about that, is the fact that small town locations, a job site located near a small town that brings people in at the job site from a small town just has a better safety record than a big town. So if you're outside of New York City or Houston or Chicago or LA and you've got that site, right, and people come from that site, we look at their safety record. Then we look at somebody who's in Rocheron, Texas, or they're in Jonesboro, Arkansas, outside of Dublin, Georgia, outside of a small area. Why are those small town safety records so much better? Why are they so much safer in the small town job site?
Related.
That's right. And down south, some of them are too related, but they are definitely related. And they know each other. They hunt and fish together. They're willing to call each other out and say, "Hey, Johnny, you can't do that. I don't care if you are the project manager. You can't go in there without your safety glasses on." And so you kind of have that, your cousin will tell you to wear your gloves, that's for sure. Put your damn gloves on, So I think that says a lot about how important relationships are. So those small town safety records have something to teach us about knowing each other and about kind of creating that. One of the things when I speak at some of these safety events is bringing people together to shake hands and talk who maybe don't get a chance to do a lot of that. Maybe they're going to hang out. They're going to go play top golf, or they're going to go down to the bar or do whatever they're going to do to know each other. So I'm a big advocate in the area that knowing the people that you work with dramatically improves your safety. And it improves your trust. If you trust somebody, you're going to listen to them when they tell you something. So,
absolutely. In that Facebook group, United States Safety Professionals, that I've seen a few posts in there. This one post that I replied to mentioned, what's the best certification or what's the best way at this? And I think I replied something like, it's like, look, you just need to get out there and speak to the people. This is a people industry, not a certification or degree. You're going to get more respect from the people out in the field if they know who you are. If you go up and ask them or introduce yourself like, "Hey, I got a CHST," they don't care. They don't care. But if you say, "Hey, I'm Corey. I'm from Texas. I'm from my tools as a welder." We sat here to see that I want to get along with you, but at the same time, let's follow policy and let's do this right.
Right.
What can I help you with?
That's huge. That's a big
And I'm sure
thing.
you guys have seen young kids coming out of college that have degrees and all this stuff in safety, and they're like timid to go out to a site or walk around. But then they want to spout off, well, OSHA says this and OSHA says that. And I've seen it personally, and you just kind of watch them just kind of going, okay, yeah, this is going to be fun.
Right.
And then you got a 50, 60-year-old guy looking at them like they got three eyes. Then that's when you pull them aside and go, okay, they don't care. They don't care if you have a degree. You've got to know them. You've got to ask them about their personal life. How's the wife doing? Hey, I know last week you said she wasn't feeling very good. that's how you're going to
Right,
get to
right. But David, what you said is so big and so powerful. What you said to lead into that, Corey, knowledge is not power.
Not in this
Implementation is
world.
power. Implementation is power. But also when it comes to like what you said, David, is that if somebody doesn't know who you are, if you've never really had a conversation with them and you walk in with a body of knowledge, your knowledge may be great. You might even be 100% correct. But if people don't listen to you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how smart you are if nobody wants to listen to you. It just doesn't matter. And on a job site, you got to have both. You got to have some education. You got to have some experience. And a lot of times that's not the same person. If everybody on a team is just like you, it's a crappy team. So it's good to have, there's no football team has ever won because they were all really good quarterbacks. They had to have more than one person on the team. So I think that that diversity of knowledge is important, but it leads to a big deal for me these days. And that's generational safety, generational differences and how that affects. Because right now it is true. People under 40, between like 22 and 40, have the most incidents, but people 50 years old and up have the most fatalities. That's right. That's true.
What?
So,
excuse me. The 22 to 40 with the most incidents. Have you got some data on time in the field or time in the industry on those?
Well, that's the thing. Once you factor in the time in the industry, it does make some difference, right? But when you put it all together, the average incident, the age of an incident is about in construction. Now, construction's a little different because there are some construction sites where everybody's older. You know that. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can talk about keeping and attracting employees. That's a big topic right now. But 38.7 or something is the average age of someone hurt in construction. So that's right in the
38
middle.
years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the thing is that those are cool stats, but I don't think they help enough. I think the stat that we want to start with is that I think it's 24 to 26% of all work-related fatalities are construction. That's an important thing to know.
Yeah. Construction in terms of separating what work is, like retail work versus.
No, I mean on planet Earth, of the people who die in a working environment, a quarter of them are in construction.
Yeah.
That is a significant thing to think about.
That's huge.
Means, that's huge. So that means is that construction, is really we know the construction's a foundation of civilization. When we're all dead and gone, they're going to find something we built and go, what the hell? We're still digging up stuff people have built. What is that? So it is a foundational part. Building stuff is really how we can trace that there even was a civilization. We find what they built. So we know how important construction is to the world. Construction's extraordinarily important. But I think that safety is also the foundation of civilization. Because the world was not built by dead, injured dudes. That's not who built the world. No.
No, not at all.
Dead people are rarely productive statistically, right?
Yeah.
So being safe on the job site is just gigantic. I just think it's the biggest thing. And in construction, it's literally if a fourth of all work-related deaths are construction, that means we have the level of situational awareness that everybody has to believe in every day is just huge. But to get back to the generations, here's what I'm seeing. You got 56-year-old Bill working with 26-year-old Hunter, okay? So the problem is that the first thing that Bill does is want to downgrade Hunter because of Hunter's lack of experience. And that's very normal. We all do it. And they say things like, "Oh, Hunter, you don't know anything. Back in the late 80s, we got down there naked with a hammer and fixed it because we were men." Like, what? Like, why was Bill naked? Like, right?
Why was Bill naked?
You got all this protective clothing and
we need
special
HR
equipment. We used to go down there with a stick and like a handkerchief, and we would like, "What are you talking about?" That's
what's a handkerchief?
Yeah, what's a handkerchief, right? but it's normal from someone to speak from their experience. The problem with that is the minute you tell that to a young person, well, they're not listening anymore. They think you're just criticizing them. So I think it's important that we have to deal with people for who they are and not who we wish they were. And the worst leadership strategy on earth is wishing people were like you. That'd be the worst strategy.
Yeah.
So, I think that we have to agree. Yeah, we have to agree that we need each other on that job site. We really do. Without young people on a job site, there's some stuff you can't do. And by the way, all these older people getting hurt because they won't ask Hunter for some help. That's another big thing. People get hurt because they won't ask for help. It takes a lot more guts, by the way, to ask for help than it does to believe you don't need any help. It takes a lot more guts to say, hey, Hunter, man, can you help me with this? So we got to work together. And if you're young, if you're a 26-year-old Hunter, I know that what older people say to you sounds like the past. And I know it sounds like there's a better idea. Historically and statistically, you're going to have a better idea. That's how the future works. Maybe not this week, Hunter, but you will have a better idea probably. But you're not going to have that good of an idea unless you know what the old idea was. That is for sure.
Right.
Very difficult to come up with a better idea, unless you know what the old one was.
Yeah, you brought up a good point about asking for help. And, like you're going through all these different trends and data and stuff like that. I think one of the biggest ways to start moving the safety culture in the right direction is to create that safe zone to ask for help. I think that's one of the strongest foundations we have right now.
I agree.
Because we are seeing a huge turnover. To your point, more fatalities are in our 50 and 60 year higher. So now the turnover is coming in with the younger crews coming up in the fields, and they want to be like granddad. They want to be like dad. So I don't have to ask for help. I don't want to do this because dad never asked for help. Granddaddy never asked for help.
Right.
I think if we can get that foundation straight and start letting people understand that, hey, your stop work authority is out there for a reason. Do your JHA. Your JHA is mainly out, and I want to question you on this too, because I got my own opinions about a JHA. But your JHA is really just to give you a direction what to go, more or less a timeline and a plan. And you've got people out there that want to nitpick JHAs. Oh, well, he missed this step. And I'm like, what's it matter? He's the experienced one. Even though he missed the step, did he get injured or did we get the job done right? Right. And I bring that up because I got to watch how I say this now because I'm in a different world. I don't want this to actually fall into the wrong ears.
Corey, just so you know, just for the show so far, we're going to get some weird emails. But go ahead.
I would think, why stop now?
Yeah.
I'm probably getting them. I'm going to look. I'm probably getting them right now. So
no, I just love a lot of what you're saying, and I agree 100%. So, a couple of things I'd like to ask you though. I do have to do a speech tomorrow in about 100 people, and in our program, we've got 4 recordables, which has shot our TRIR up to 0.84.
Oh, sure.
So the first thing I told them is start making everybody work overtime. Because
they still want you to speak.
It's 200,000 hours or something, right? So the more hours we work, we'll drop that TRIR. Just go ahead and go for it. Don't make me set up in front of 100.
Right. So, can I add something?
No, that was just a joke, though. That was serious. That was just a joke.
Here you go. More stats. 64% of all injuries are in overtime. 64% of all injuries.
Yeah,
in overtime. So something to think about.
Get more people on site then.
Oh my gosh.
People are tired. That's what happens. People get tired, So that's the truth.
Right.
But you said about the JHA, when you fill something out, when you do anything, any type of job report of any kind, pre-safety assessment of any kind, right? I have to be careful because people call it different things in different places,
Yes, sir. So that's the other thing I got an issue with. It doesn't have an identity. It needs to have a single identity. you've got PTPs, AHAs, JRAs, JHAs. I mean, that's why nobody really
JSA.
JSAs. Yeah,
Right,
there's
right.
not a true respect because that form doesn't really have its identity. That's
I
just my
got it. And I don't know what we can do about that. I mean, I think someone should do something about that. I think there ought to be every industry ought to have one. We ought to call it one thing. It ought to be
yeah.
the form or the thing. But I will say that when you do that, the act of doing it means that it gives your stop work authority some power. That's all. It's
Yeah.
important that you've done that, because if you're going to give your people stop work authority, then you're going to have them. They're going to have a process that's automatic to everything that they're going to do. That when they say, "Hey, we got to hold up on this," okay, well then that gives it some teeth. That you did something that gave you at least enough authority in that particular job that what you said meant something. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's where that's kind of, so to add on to my statement about the JHA, one thing I look at is every RCA that you've ever done has the final note ever came down to they didn't put enough info on that JHA.
Right.
Is that what the RCA final statement says? Okay, so now
Right.
our action item is do 10 more minutes on a JHA and we're all safe.
Right.
Because you do your JHAs in the morning, like you said, it's the act of it. It's getting you in that.
Right.
It's getting you in that groove, getting you in that moment that,
Right.
hey, we're doing this right. Our leader is telling us what to do. He's laying our day out for us, or she's laying our day out for us. We know what tools to get. We know exactly where to go and do this and that. The problem is 20 minutes later, that JHA ain't even, and nobody reverts back to it after lunch or nobody. So Dave and I came up with something when we used to work together that we would print off, and most of our work was really routine. We were inside a data center. And so what we allowed our crew to do is just essentially just type all the everyday tasks that you do. And what we really stressed to them to do was, did anything happen yesterday? What was any roadblocks? Did we get a new trade partner come in on top of us that we wasn't aware of? Were there any injuries? Were there any sudden stops? Did we run out of material? No, everything's good. So let's move forward.
Yeah, because we actually treated it like it was alive. It wasn't like Corey said. You fill it out and then you stick it in a closet somewhere, going, "Hey, we have one." But we treated it like it was alive. So every morning huddle. What happened yesterday that we did not expect? Like you said, we're working around a different trade partner, or doors are locked, or and then each day it was wiped off and it was started over again. But to your point about stop work authority and the JHAs, you have young kids that, even though you go over the JHA or the PTP, whatever you want to call it, they may not know, even though they've been told, okay, here's the steps. If you miss the step, somebody could get hurt. But they see, like you said, Bob or whoever, the older guy, do it, going, well, maybe that's okay to do because he's been doing it for so long, and so they don't want to come up to him and say, hey, stop, let's rethink this. That doesn't look safe. And so, like you said, management, supervisors need to really stress the stop work authority. And yes, you not only do you have the authority, but you have the obligation to do that, to stop that, question it, and it might be safe. It might be okay, but at least take that time to think about it.
Absolutely. Now, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, those conversations are conversations that we have to have, and ways that we have to think. There's two kinds of safety investigations. There's preliminary, and there's forensic. We can always say, okay, what happened, go backwards, but being prepared, and then again, you got to stick with it. It's got to mean something. It's got to be something that everybody believes is important. And I think that, again, what comes out of that direct supervisor's mouth about something that's being important. And we have to talk about that. It has to be talked about a lot. Some of the meetings that we have sometimes in the toolbox talk at some safety, situation or some job site or whatever it is, what your history has been in the business that you're in. You've looked at that. Those conversations have to go on and continue all the time. And no one knows more about the problems at your job site historically than you do. And so we are, like you said, we're obligated. We are obligated. I mean, even, Johnny, who's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, he's been on that job site every day for 110 days. He's a leading authority on what's going on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it doesn't.
I'm sorry. Just one more thing on these JHAs, and then I'll move on. Or PTPs is they're not your MOP or SOP. That's the way I look at it. You got a standard operating procedure or a method of procedure. That's how you do your job.
That's right.
And I think that MOP needs to correlate with your JHA. Right. But your JHA should match the sections of that MOP at what stage of the game you're in on that scope of work. Because all four of us, I can go read a JHA that my crew did. And I'm like, okay, looks good. Dave can go read the exact same one. Oh, well, you missed this step. Then you could go back and read the exact same one. He's like, yeah, you did. You could add this to it too. There's never enough information on a JHA when you kind of break it down. So that's why, your SOP and JHA need to be separated, but they got to be together on what part of the step that you're at doing that job.
I agree. And not everybody is that, much of a linear thinker, by the way. And so it's always good to have people talk, look at it. Having different people look at the same information is a very, very good idea, by the way. It is a very, very good idea. It may be the best idea ever. We have this body of information. To have one person look at it and go from that interpretation is, I'm sure there are limits on that, and people can argue with how feasible it is to do under a certain circumstance at a certain job site. I get all that, but human beings may be created with equal rights, or we hope, but not equal ways of looking at things. People see something different.
Absolutely.
I work with a guy. That everybody could look at this pipe. It looks fine. It's really fine. And this guy, an older guy with no tech or equipment, could look at a pipe and say, you know what? I don't know what it is, man. And you go take a closer look and would almost always find something. Now, I don't know. He's clairvoyant.
Sling blade.
Right. He's got that kind of thing. He was.
Yeah, he just had that comment. I know what's wrong with it. Ain't got no gas in it.
Right. He was the blade of pipe fitting. So this going. But my point is that's a great line. It's got no gas in it. Got no gas. So I'm surprised that anyway. So where was Sling Blade 2? Huh? Sling Blade 2? Sorry.
I know. He ran off and never came back. I don't know. I don't think they found him.
Of all the bad sequels.
Choked on a biscuit.
Choked on a biscuit.
No Sling Blade 2.
Taters.
That's somebody's nickname on the job site. Hey, Sling Blade. Get in here. Get Sling Blade in here.
I think that's the name. You're going to get us canceled and we ain't even got started.
Sling Blade.
And then you got like 6 guys turning around going, what?
What? Right. Who are
you got the mustard?
Who's going to crawl down that trench? Sling Blade?
Come on, Sling Blade.
Going back to your... Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Corey. Yeah.
I was just going to say, going back to you talking about how bringing the culture together by getting people speaking to each other and getting to know each other. Right. Dave and I also put an incentive program during the JHA moments is when they were doing it in the morning, whoever could come up with the most things to do or speak the most would get like a little chit. And at the end of the day, they would get like a token. So and that really started taking off. You
Mm-hmm.
would start seeing more conversations in the pre-task huddles
Yeah,
in the mornings.
absolutely. I love
People
that
were
stuff.
those little come on, yeah. So
I love that. That's great.
and Dave and I ran one of the most successful crews in that company on these data centers.
Right.
It was just because we knew it was a people game.
Right.
It is.
It is.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And it's a tough one. You know, I spoke at the 2002 annual, I guess, Western Hemisphere Chevron Convention, whatever it's called, in Salt Lake City, 2002. And I had looked at Gallup talking a lot about employee engagement. There was a book that came out, I think, called First Break All the Rules. It was written by Gallup people. And they had 80,000 managers and 1 million employees. And it was just about leadership, but about the concept of employee engagement and how it created all this success and performance and all this. So I was using that in safety presentations and talking to especially safety people and safety professionals and helping them with their presentations at that point. But when I was talking about that in 2002 about the connection between employee engagement and safety, we had like 3,000 people in that audience, and half of them looked at me like monkeys in a magic show. They were like, what does that mean? And, because it goes, but at that time, the idea that human beings themselves just working together and people treating people well and listening and people feeling heard on the job site. And the same things that would make them want to do that job was also what created just a natural level of situational awareness. They were safer and they were looking out for each other. Today, we partner. I have an actual partnership with Caterpillar Safety. And I mean, that's the foundation of their whole deal. It's the foundation of most modern safety programs. I mean, there's not anywhere you go that employee engagement is not a part of it. So I think what you're saying right now, Corey, about the fact there needs to be a standard. There needs to be a standard process, a standard form. There needs to be a JHA that's consistent across all industries or all formats, that there's just this thing that we use. I think that's a big deal. I think that's something that really would make a difference. Everybody would understand it. Everybody would have it. Obviously, there could be different versions of it for different industries and all that. But I mean, there has to be something that, and we talked about holding people accountable for safety, but holding people for accountable of an action. I mean, like, action and adaptability creates opportunity. I mean, are you, are you willing to take the action, make the adjustment, and then that gives you a safer situation. That gives you a better thing. But I think you need a guideline for that. And I don't think everybody's that much of a linear thinker where they really think that way. I think people need to be handed to some degree a repeatable process that's easy to understand, easy to use. But to your point, by the way, which I think is huge, perfection. I think that perfection is the foundation of procrastination. I think if you're waiting to get it perfect, maybe you wouldn't do it in time.
You get paralysis by analysis.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, I mean, I understand that, that you have to do something right. I get that. But I also believe that, like you said, people may not get it perfect, but 90% of something is a hell of a lot better than we forgot. How about that? We forgot the whole damn thing.
That's what you don't want to hear. First thing in an RCA is what happened. Oh, I messed up back there.
That's right.
No, dude. Yeah. Come on.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't
It's
know.
really interesting about that. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and to that point about having things that are standards.
Right.
Look at the military. What does marching have to do with fighting a battle? Not really much, but it's you have a unit that walks the same, that thinks the same, that knows that left foot goes first, and then when we turn together. And so you're absolutely right. I think safety is this kind of sporadic when it comes to our forms, and and it needs to be, if you go from one state or one company, everything's the same.
Yeah, because look at it this way:
in
put
that
it back
aspect.
in people form. Dave, to your point, I mean, it's great. Just had me think of this idea. Look at it as putting it in people form. We're all talking about this whole podcast today was this is a people game. You got to get to know the person. Look at that form in itself without an identity. Think of it out there. You don't know this person out there working. They don't get respect. But then all of a sudden, you start knowing their names. You start talking to them. Now all of a sudden, that person is getting respect from you. Now I go to this job. I have a JHA. I go to this job. I got a PTP. Now I got a long black piece of cardboard I got to write on. Whatever. It's like, and I like what you said, Garrison, about making it as uniform as possible. Like having everything the same, but then whatever industry is going to have different hazards. But what are we using?
Right. And as we speak, there are some industries and certainly some companies and locations that are doing this kind of thing. I've seen, in a small, I hate to use the word microcosm, but in a small area, they were doing it, and it was working great. And now this location's got a much better safety record than they do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot to be said about knowing, what you're supposed to be doing, and I think my personal, when it comes to safety, I believe there's a lot of stress involved when you don't have a repeatable process and you don't have things prioritized and you don't know what you're supposed to do. Because I think the leading cause of stress is knowing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and consistently doing something else. I think that's the leading cause of stress. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're supposed to do. And now we look at, because we talk a lot about stress these days, about how stress causes people to lose their situational awareness. They make poor decisions. They become more forgetful. When people are stressed, they get angry. So all those things that happen from stress, and I think some prioritizing and knowing what a good job looks like when it's done, not just the steps to get there. What does a safe job look like completed? Kind of knowing where you're going. And then that process along the way is huge. I think it makes a gigantic difference.
And then that stress will affect morale eventually.
Right.
Yeah. You just get overwhelmed. I mean, so you're super busy. I got your schedule the last time that we spoke. And this new position that I've had it about a year now. It's a lot more office work.
Right.
But there's a lot of things to do. And I find myself getting stressed until I just get my little planner and I was like, okay, I'm going to write out. These are the 5 things or 7 things I got to get done today. I write them out.
Right.
I don't squirrel brain. I stop. I just kind of regroup about 10 minutes and I get to work on step 1. Finish it, scratch it off, go to step 2. And then I find myself not getting overwhelmed and I get more done instead of trying to, crap, I forgot this, I forgot that. Because we got so much going on, we can't remember what we got to do in a day.
Well, it was a really simple thing, but I'm going to say this was 20 years ago. They did a bunch of research. Was there something that successful people had in common? And what was interesting is that they kept looking for these things. And every time they would think, oh, this is it. It's like, oh, well, no. Like successful people didn't even think the same way. So you had all these successful people. They didn't necessarily take the same actions. Successful people didn't necessarily believe the same things. They didn't have the same levels of self-esteem. There was almost nothing. You'd have 8 successful people or 10 or 1,000, and you'd find the commonalities weren't like you thought they were. We thought successful people do these 3 things, boom, boom, boom. But they found one thing. You know what the one thing they found that people who were just successful in general had in common?
Prioritize.
They made lists. They were list makers.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One thing.
It keeps them. I found that out just by trial and error with this new position. I just write it down because it keeps me from getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Well, the guy that owned
and then you actually get to actually see your accomplishments by, like you said, scratching it off. Okay, I got
a little pride.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I've got on my phone, I've got something called Anydo, and I just have lists. I have It's called
Anydo.
Anydo. Like I didn't name it. Don't blame me. Anydo. Anyway,
You just do any of them.
it sounds like you do anything. I'm doing the Anydo. What are you doing? Anything.
Yeah.
I've got different lists
like
on here. Okay. Now that you've made fun of my thing. But my point is, I use it all the time. So the guy that founded Babbitt died brain cancer. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. I talked to him not long before that, and I was not in that business before I went there. I was, I went on to do some other things and safety products and all that. But I learned a lot, and I went to San Jacinto College to get certified in instrumentation and all that. But he always said, he goes, a short pencil is just a lot better than a long memory. That's what he used to say. Yeah, what he would say.
I like it.
I like that.
But
I like that a lot.
Make
He
your
literally
list.
had a little pencil. He carried this little pencil about this. This is like
Yeah.
So Albert Einstein said almost something similar to that. Have you heard his quote about that?
No.
Because he was known for writing a bunch of stuff down. And he was like, Albert, you got this mind that could remember. He goes, why would I waste what brain cells I got remembering that when I can just write it down?
Right. Yeah, that's right. But my favorite Einstein quote is ridiculous. They asked him in an interview one time. He notoriously just didn't like reporters, so he kind of said some interesting things. And
Nice. I love it.
They asked him. They said, "What do you think is your biggest accomplishment?" He was old. He was in the last 5-10 years of his life. What is your biggest accomplishment? And he said, "Well, the one thing that I can do that most people absolutely cannot do." He goes, "It's my ability to wiggle my ears." And then he just wiggled his ears like he could wiggle. What he said. And he's got like,
I love it.
he's got all
love
these
it.
top reporters from around the world going, like what? Like he's
I can wiggle my
pretty
ears.
funny. But,
I like
but the
it.
thing is that in the final analysis of safety, about where are we going in safety? I'll talk a little bit about this. Safety, driving is not getting better. Distracted driving is ridiculous. 351,000 injuries last year. We think 20 people a day are dying every day in the North America, and it was hard to measure it. That's what we think. We can measure the injuries, and people are just simply distracted by their phones. Of the 1.3 million incidents, and you can Google all this, that happened approximately last year, 2022, the 1.3 million, car accidents, I should say, that happened, 200,000 of them are attributed to GPS. So GPS is great, but you're talking about you're driving and you've got this thing. You are literally have something else in your vehicle that has absolutely some of your awareness, a lot of it, and instructing you what to do. You're hearing it, you're looking at it. It's just distracting. So we're talking about distracted. That's a very interesting thing. I think GPS is great, and I'm not anti-GPS, but I think if you're using GPS, you have to take a breath for a second and realize that driving is something you've got to be focused. You've got to really, that level of situational awareness just has to be there. Now, the other thing is, about what happens when you're on your phone. I believe that when you got your phone here and that ding goes off, ding, I think that it's like addictive behavior. I think you're getting a dopamine hit that says, hey, I got to check my phone. Because why would people do that under any circumstances? And we couldn't find anybody who ever said this. Yeah, it is true. I did lose the leg, but that was a very important text. No one's ever said that. So there's no, how important is that? Really, how important is the text really? I mean, and we couldn't find, but the scary thing now is that it's surpassed drunk driving. I think that's interesting to find out that texting and driving and distracted driving is surpassed drunk driving, because if you're driving drunk, at least you're looking out the window, you're trying to, you're, what was that, a dog? You're at least, you're hammered, but you're at least focused on driving. You might drive like crap, but you're focused on driving. When you're texting, your brain's out the window. Your imagination, your consciousness, your awareness is outside of your vehicle. having a conversation with your friend in Dallas and you're driving down a freeway in Connecticut. That's not situational awareness. That's not,
Right.
I mean, so that's, I think, the thing. And I'm not saying people are like, well, we should drive more drunk. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that drunk driving
No,
is
we're
bad.
not saying that, listeners.
Disclaimer.
Garrison did
We're not
say
saying
that.
drive drunk. No.
Everybody will have a digital disclaimer. You'll have to click.
I just say that because there's a guy on Facebook in about 30 minutes going, Garrison said it's okay to drive drunk. I did not say that at all. Some guy on LinkedIn. That's what he said. I recorded it off. I'm here to play the recording. Right?
He's an expert.
He's an expert. He says I can drink and drive, which I'm getting ready to do right now when I get home.
That's right.
We'll edit that out. We'll edit that out.
Yeah. Well, and we're all pretty old to remember. We didn't, but at a point we didn't have cell phones. So for someone to say I had to answer this text, what did you do before cell phones? You didn't answer those texts.
That's right.
You didn't have texts. So nothing's that important.
Yeah, that's nothing. But one of the things I think can help when it comes to construction, especially, is someone's driving to the job site. Stop texting people when they're driving to the job site. I don't understand. That's ridiculous.
Quit being the problem.
Right. I think Jimmy's almost here. He's at the railroad tracks. Let's text him. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
poor
especially
Jimmy. Boy, he's got beat up this one.
I'd like to apologize for all the people out there named Jimmy.
Everybody named Jimmy.
Hey, I've been called out for that before. Somebody called me and they go, hey, man, you keep mentioning like a guy who's not very smart named Jimmy. Don't you think that you're being prejudiced?
Hey, Corey, we both know the same Jimmy.
I think so.
And all I was going to say, in a world of political correctness, I want to say this, is that it just seems to be a disproportionate amount of people who are having problems are named Jimmy. Okay, I'm just saying that. That's so.
Well, Garrison,
if I get a letter from the Jimmies, I'm sorry.
I've had an excellent time with you and really appreciate you joining our podcast. But I want to get with you real quick before we leave. You're a best-selling author, and some of your website, stuff like that. Tell our listeners where they can get your book, where they can reach out to you, where they can find you, and give them some of your information.
Yeah. You can go to garrisonwynn.com. First of all, that's GarrisonWynn.com. And you can go to garrisonwynn.com/safety. You can also go to my website, and on the top drop down, there'll be a safety area to go that's specific just to safety. As far as you can just put my name into Amazon and put Garrison Wynn in Amazon and stuff will show up. So, simple. But I would like to
name of your book.
There are two books. One I co-authored, one I wrote. The best-selling book is The Real Truth About Success: What the Top 1% Do Differently and Why They Won't Tell You. And that book is about taking advantage of your advantages, but there's a very specific segment in that book about safety and how it applies. And again, I was inspired to write that book based on some things I was seeing, over time. So,
love it. I can't wait to get it. Can't wait to
get
it.
I'm looking on a new book. The pandemic came out, and because I wrote that book a long time ago, and I'm very lucky that it did as well as it did, I think. But the pandemic came out, and I got a book deal and didn't write the book. So how about that? So I got to work that. I don't think they're very happy. I don't think they're happy. So I
wrote an ebook. I don't know if you'd be interested in reading it and give me your thoughts on it.
Well, I would, and I wanted to say something about this. You said you're getting ready to go speak somewhere. So if you're going to speak in front of a group of people, just make sure that you identify what your main focus is. In other words, if you're going to give a talk for 30 minutes, like what's the focus? When I speak, I have a keynote speech called Influencing Safety. And I say, so what we're talking about is, do you have the relationships and trust in place to create a sustainable culture of safety? If I'm talking about that topic, if I'm talking about, if it's just, I have a topic that's called just, about supervisors, about generational stuff. I make sure that the first thing I say before I start explaining or telling a story or anything is that the audience knows in general what the main focus of the talk is. That's the first thing. The other thing is, if you're going to tell a story, make a point, tell a story, and you can emphasize the point. My chemical plant explosion thing, I said, everybody knows something you don't, right? Everybody. I told the story, and after the story, I said, and everybody knows something you don't. Sometimes you can bookend with the same statement with a story in the middle. Stories are very powerful, and I'm a big storyteller. But stories have to have a point that people can understand, that you're not just saying something gratuitously to be funny or to tell your story, that you have a real definable point that someone can go, hey, that makes sense. I'm a funny guy. When I give presentations, I'm entertaining. And sometimes in the safety world, there aren't that many funny safety speakers, but if you see me speak, you'll know that I'm making a point, and that I'm not just up there telling jokes. I'm not just up there telling a story. I'm talking about what can you do differently tomorrow to be part of a better safety culture, or to create a safety culture, or to individually be connected to your own situational awareness. So I'm focused on a specific thing, and some of the stories and points lead to that thing. Does that make sense? So
Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also just be clear. The most effective people are the ones people understand. So clarity is clarity king.
And so don't talk like
Corey, you're
Boomhauer
screwed.
or Shaq.
Hey, I was picked up in an Uber in Tulsa, Oklahoma by Boomhauer. A guy talked just like that. I couldn't believe it. Exactly.
Hey, what, man? You get that dando puppet over there, man, and you're with most
Exactly
grass.
what he said. He couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been nice. I had no idea what the guy said for 20 minutes. He could not have been nicer.
And that's funny because I feel that way with Corey. I can barely, I have no idea what he's saying sometimes.
Corey.
I got a transcript with the little white bouncy ball that comes up and down. Every time I say a word, he knows where I'm at in the sentence.
I want to see you, specifically you, talk with the bouncing ball. I'll pay for that. I don't know where I go to see that. I will see that. Corey and sometimes the ball will just hang. Corey, the ball will go bounce and then bounce again.
So. Sometimes it just stops in midair. It don't even know what the hell I said.
Right.
It don't know where to go.
It just fills in the blanks with blah, blah, blah.
Right. So you can tell, no, your Zoom didn't freeze up. That's just Corey. He's thinking.
Yeah.
Stop right there.
So, it runs with my brainwaves, so it just stops.
That's right.
Well, Garrison, we do appreciate your time. We try to keep it to an hour to respect your time and also our listeners. And Dave usually signs us off with a good question for our guests, so I'll let him do his thing.
Well, usually, because we like, as hosts, and of course, we try to finish it off with possibly a question for our audience and with our guests and stuff. So you went, a lot of different routes, like comedian, obviously safety, and then owning your own company and guest speaking and all that stuff. What kind of advice would you give someone who is, younger, maybe getting out of high school, that says, hey, I want to get into safety? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, the first advice I would really give them, and Corey alluded to this, is to have no work experience, to not have been in a situation where you didn't have to do something that might be dangerous or precarious, having to do that carefully. Not having that experience at all, I think, is a drawback. Mm-hmm. So I think one thing I would do, I would find a job, you don't have to do it forever, short period of time, where you can actually experience what it's like to be inside of some type of a safety culture, to do a job where safety is an important part of that job. I think that's really important. I don't think I would have ever thought about safety unless I would have been digging a ditch and using a ditch witch and things like that. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing is figure out what you want to do. If you're going to go the educational route, do that. And that requires that you're going to have to, the one thing about safety or anything other educational is you don't have to be the world's greatest student. You just have to study and have good study habits. So if you're going to want to study something, develop those study habits. And by the way, these days you can Google what are the top 10 best study habits. How do people study effectively? Today, that information's everywhere. It wasn't back in the day. So being able to do that. The other thing and the last thing is that do you really want to do it? people are all often very, very good at certain things that they really want to do and have a real passion for and all that. But you hear the passion thing a lot. Beyond the passion, I mean, do you really want to do it where you're willing to put the effort in it? You can be passionate about stuff, but not like the journey it takes to get there. I would definitely take a look at the journey, because if you like the journey, you can do all the stuff. If you like, everything that I've done, I kind of like the journey part. I really did. And I mean, even digging ditches and running a machine that digs ditches and doing that kind of thing, I like the people. I like the accomplishment when you were finished, when you were done. By the way, if you dig a 40-foot ditch at the end, you're so glad, by the way, to be done. So, a sense of accomplishment, I think. So I think those are the most important things. And by the way, I love that question. The second thing is we need people. We need people in safety who are willing to commit some time and some effort in safety. I'm so glad to see what's happened in safety in the last 10 years. So if you're interested in safety, I think safety is interested in you. That's for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for giving
Great
some
pleasure.
of your very, very valuable time to us and our listeners. I know that they've got a lot out from your wisdom and what you said, plus they got a couple chuckles. So again, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Garrison. And for our listeners, again, he gave you all his contact info. You can also reach him out on Facebook. If you've got a corporation you need to speak at, or if you got any questions, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to reach out to you, help you with some type of situation you got on the job site. So, Garrison, thanks a lot. Really enjoyed it, and it was a pleasure meeting you and getting to know you. Hopefully, we'll have a part 2 with you.
I'd love to.
Yes, definitely.
You guys take care. A lot of fun. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good one.
Safe.
Thank you. Stay safe, guys.